Okay, we've got our 4th of July special, and we got another rendition of Solitaire Chess. Since you guys liked it before, we're going to continue with the series. Why not? And I like testing myself a little bit. And today, my favorite player is going to get outdone at his own type of game. Ulf is going to get Ulfed in this one. We've got Ivanchuk with white playing against Ulf with black. And I know the opening was a 4 knights symmetrical English, and we'll start once the opening kind of ends, and we'll play guess the move from there. I'll explain my ideas, and I'll make moves on the board, and I get an alert. If I am wrong, then we go back and make the correct move, and at the end of the game, I check and see with the engine both players, the player of the game, as well as my moves, to see if they were reasonable or if I pitched it and blundered entirely. So without further ado, I did change the move order for this game because I'm currently working on my Master the English opening course, which should be coming out on Chessable as soon as the Chessable people get back with me. So I don't know what the holdup is, but it happens. So 1c4, and like I said, we're going to get to the symmetrical 4 knights English position. Castle, castle, d4, takes, and here one of my favorite positions to play is after a6, c5, which is an absolute positional crush. Got to know these types of weird sidelines. The main move is knight takes d4, which was played in the game, and queen takes d4. And this is where we're going to start the position, and black plays d6. So, okay. After playing this position in many, many games, I know that as soon as you reach here, white wants to move the queen off of the long diagonal so there's no potential issues. And you, a lot of the time, will get a Maroczy bind style position. So you want the queen on a flexible square because the natural break in the position is b5, so queen d3 is the main line, so you have flexibility to support the e-pawn as well as watch for that b5 break. So queen d3, which was the move played in the game, bishop f5, and another reason why you want the queen on d3 is supported by the knight on c3, bishop g2, so e4, and so it is. Bishop e6, putting pressure on the c-pawn. So my first reaction here is b3, overprotect the c-pawn so it's not a target. Yep, a6. So now it's a question of how to finish development. Where does this bishop go? And in a lot of variations, black will play queen a5 to swing over. And you don't want to get in trouble putting the bishop here. So in these positions, typically, the bishop belongs on d2, so if queen a5 is played, we have knight d5, with the discovery on the queen and attacking both e7 and f6. So I'm going to go with bishop d2. Yep, and this is basically opening prep for me so far, or if you just have a sense of the general themes in the position, you're good to go, which I've been picking out games from openings that I like or structures that I like, because I feel like I can explain them a bit better than if I pick out some random Sicilian game and I'm going to get every tactical move wrong that's played by both players in the game. So after bishop d2, knight d7, and because we've shored up the pawn structure on c4 and e4, we don't have to worry about either knight move, really. Knight e5, queen e2, knight c5, queen e2. Now it's a question of how to improve the position, and don't be in a hurry to play moves like f4. It may seem like now's the time, but it's not completely necessary. So we've got a lot of flexibility here. One move to rule out almost universally in these positions is rook d1, because rook d1 is often met by bishop g4, and you don't ever want to play f3. It's kind of the same commitment with playing f4. If your attack does not succeed in the middle game, you're going to lose in the endgame, more than likely, because you've made pawn weaknesses around the king, and once a rook or heavy in general gets to, say, the second rank and cuts the king off, you have some issues. And that's completely fine in positions like the Botvinnik English or the closed Sicilian, but you don't have the same commitment here because we already have a space advantage in the Maroczy bind. So I'm looking to simply get the rook off this long diagonal, and I don't have to worry about anything. So I'm a big fan of rook to c1, and we see what black does. All right, so far so good. b5, and this looks overly optimistic by Ulf. I don't want to allow him to take and ruin my pawn structure. So pawn takes, knight takes, rook takes a2. Okay, do I even need to do that? Pawn takes, queen takes. Bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3, rook takes a2. And that looks like a great position. We got the bishop pair, open game, and that b pawn could be dangerous in a lot of variations. So I am going with c takes b here without much hesitation. Yep. And now knight takes runs into rook takes a2, and I don't see a reason why we shouldn't take with the queen. No tactics, no nasty discoveries. Yep. Okay, we're following right along with my immediate reaction. Excuse me. So the next idea, and you should pause because my first reaction was to take with the bishop, but now the more I'm looking at it, the more I like taking with the rook because one, it's protecting the b pawn, nice. Two, the bishop may be better on h6 to harass the rook. So I like rook takes c3 because of its flexibility, both with the idea of doubling rooks on the c-file, supporting our passer in the position, and giving our bishop more flexibility than just being on c3. So I'm going with rook takes c3. Yep, that was played in the game. Rook takes a2. Now the question is put to the bishop, and with that question, we should ask, what is the best way to move forward here? And because of the awkward nature of the rook on f8, I mean, black would want to play something like queen b8, where after queen takes, rook takes, all the pressure's on the b pawn, and black has full equality. But if we play bishop h6 here, we're getting our bishop out of trouble because it's hanging, and we're gaining a tempo because rook e8 is the only move, and then white has time to do something in the position like support the passer with the f rook, like rook b1. So I'm going bishop h6 here, which was also played in the game. Queen b8. All right, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I pause here because I expected just the simple rook e8, but of course queen b8 is a much better move because we're saying, yeah, please go ahead and play queen takes because that gets my rook out of trouble and puts pressure on the b pawn. And I don't want all my pieces tied up. Say queen takes, rook b1, rook a3, and it looks like the b pawn is lost and black goes from busted to better. And you don't want to do that against a player like Ulf because he gets a little bit to work with and you're in deep doo-doo. Queen d3 keeps tension in the position. Yeah, you don't really have a lot of options here because you can take and help him just get a positive imbalance on this pawn, or you can move the queen, and with the bishop and queen hitting here, and we only have one defender, the only logical move is queen d3 to defend the pawn. And also with the queen on d3, we have the flexibility to do, say, queen d4 to threaten mate, and as they play a move like knight e5, we advance the pawn off of the color square of his bishop and begin to make progress. So I like queen d3 the more I'm looking at it and its flexibility. So I'm going to go queen d3. And so far, so good. Black plays rook c8. Okay, my immediate reaction is taking the rook because it gets the queen off of attacking the b-pawn and gives us time to push the pawn, which seems very logical, to keep the knight off of c5 as well as just to get the pawn on a dark square. Then we can look at maybe bringing the bishop back to d2 and slowly but surely press the b-pawn. So I'm going rook takes c8. Yep. And b4. Initial reaction. But that is a problem though, isn't it? b4 runs into bishop c4. But then I've got queen c3, where I'm threatening mate. And yeah, a lot of stuff's happening there. Okay, b4, bishop c4, queen c3, knight e5, f4. Rook takes g2. If king takes g2, bishop takes f1. And on king takes f1, queen takes c3. There's some stuff going on there. Sneaky, sneaky. No f4. F4 is terrible. Okay. Stuff is happening. That is a fact. Okay, b4, bishop c4, queen c3, knight e5, rook c1. Knight g4 can't be played. That looks messy. Do I have to allow all this nonsense? Develop the last piece. Why not rook c1 immediately? Rook c1, queen b8 hits the pawn again. c1, queen b8. I don't want to go rook b1 as passive. Rook c3 seems problematic. It's just all passive, 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 passive. Knight c5 too. Rook c1, queen b8. Okay, black does have back rank problems because of the bishop on h6. We could go b4 there. Because if queen takes b4, rook c8, knight f8, rook takes f8 mate. I believe I'm hitting on the correct plan now. Rook c1, queen b8, b4, rook a4. I could even go bishop d2, and that's the type of position I'm looking for. I do want to come back and look. This can't be right. Okay, yeah, it's not right. I want to come back and look at that move at the end of the game with the complications to see if I'm evaluating that properly. But rook c1. Okay, that's what was played in the main game. Nice. Queen b8. And then I said b4 in order to get the pawn off of the double attack and basically say, go ahead, mate yourself. Yep. All right, all right, all right. Rook a7. I'm not in a hurry to push the pawn anymore. I feel like if I'm playing the game, I would go bishop d2 to hold the b-pawn and then play h4 and try to probe on the king side and just be like, okay, you can't do much, so I'm looking to harass you. Okay, bishop d2. Knight e5. Queen c3. I don't feel like I'm being critical there, though. If I go b5, knight c5 immediately. Rook b1 again seems passive. I want to keep the rook on the open file. Bishop d2 is my first reaction. Nope. Both played b5. f6 was played. So I meant Ivanchuk played b5. f6 was played by Ulf. I guess you do have a point there, because if you play something like rook b7, e5, and that doesn't work yet. Queen takes, rook c8, queen f8. That holds. I don't know. Okay, f6. Well, we're in danger of getting our bishop trapped potentially with g5, so let's move the bishop back. And because of my idea earlier, I liked bishop d2 to support the pawn. I like bishop e3 to get the rook on a weird square. But after rook b7, do we do rook b1? I feel like bishop e3 is the move, but I'm struggling to see. Knight c5, bishop takes, pawn takes, rook takes. You don't want to do bishop e3, knight c5, bishop takes, pawn takes. You don't want to go rook takes because of rook a1, bishop f1, bishop h3. Bishop e3, knight c5. Bishop takes, pawn takes. Chess is hard because I know white's got the advantage with the bishop pair, but this is not like just super trivial to win. Bishop e3, knight c5. Bishop takes, pawn takes. Bishop f1, c4. I don't know, you can't take it then. Bishop e3, knight c5. Queen e2. Rook a2. You're safe though. Okay, I feel like it's bishop e3. Yeah. Okay, the move I was worried about. Great. This is typically what good players do. My immediate reaction was queen e2, but deals with rook a2. Queen e2, rook a2, queen f1. That does not look appealing. Bishop takes c5 gives up all advantage, and after something like bishop c5, dc5, bishop f1, c4, and black's winning. Bishop c5, dc5, rook c5, rook a1, bishop f1, bishop h3. Black's winning. The pass pawn is everything here. And now that I see that moving the queen, queen b1 looks best, because you're getting off that idea of being tempoed by the rook, and you're supporting the pass pawn as well as supporting the e-pawn so you can play bishop f1. Queen b1's got to be the move. Yep. Bishop f1 looks like the move. And then we can look at taking on c5 on the subsequent move. Yep. Did not see that. Hits the rook. Wants to move the rook. Rook c3 looks very logical. After rook c3, rook takes b5. Bishop takes, queen takes. Is it enough to draw? Well, being this was the World Cup in '91 and Ivanchuk went on to win, I'm taking it as a no. No, it is not enough to draw. Rook c3. What else does he do, though? I mean, that's just... You can't go back. Yeah, rook c3, knight c5, takes, rook takes. That's got to be just one-sided. White's just going to press forever there. Knight a5 doesn't make any sense. So it's got to be rook c3, rook takes b5, bishop takes b5, queen takes b5. Rook c7. Hit the weakness on e7. Yeah, seems easy enough. I'm doing that. Yep. Yep. Okay, so the only potential problem we could have is light square weaknesses. We're covering the back rank with the queen right now. We don't have to worry about, with the pawn on e4, we don't have to worry about a queen and bishop battery yet. At some point, we may be able to go f3, bishop f2 to kind of hold light square weaknesses. We don't want black to get fully coordinated, or, like, say, if he gets a knight on e5, that would be really, really bad. But I'm still sticking to my rook c7 move. But after rook c7, king f7, I don't really see what to do from there, but it's definitely a place to start. Okay, got that. Yeah. Now for the hard part. One move threats are always easy to find. You have the technically winning position. Now you got to win it against one of the most solid chess players of all time. How to improve the position. I feel like this is the hardest move of the game. So when you get stuck, like I am right now, use Kautov's thinking process, where you look at 3 candidate moves, compare the 3 candidate moves, and I like to put a series of questions with them, like what does black want to do here? The only thing that black really wants to do is to reorganize the pieces and generate immediate counterplay, like checkmating threats against the white king. So he'd love to have a bishop on h3 and knight on e5, but black's a long way away from that. Okay, so the queen on b1 does pin the knight on b3, but there's no immediate payoff. I can't just go like rook c3 and be like, you're stuck. He can just move. Like queen b4 even. Something like, or queen a4 is probably better. Yeah, queen a4. If the queens come off the board, it's a good question. Like, is black holding that? The pawn structure seems really solid, and my experience playing Binko says knight should be fine there. So what are we looking to do? break down the black pawn structure. The rook on c7, the e-pawn is pinned. My initial candidate move is queen d1, because I don't think the pin's that valuable, and black can break it very easily. We have no way to apply more pressure to the b3 knight. Queen d1 at least makes the immediate threat of queen takes d6, and looks to reorganize. Other moves just pass. That's the only move that I see that threatens anything. So I said come up with 3 candidate moves, and I think I hit on the correct one just by my process. And I taught this at the Castle Chess Camp, this type of thinking process. When you're in a solid position, tactical positions are easy because you're like, where's the forcing move? This is a solid position. What's the long-term plan? What are you looking to try to get? What are you looking to try to avoid? And you need to make assessments of what trades you want to make. And I don't think that a queen trade here, if we just took the queens off the board right now, I don't think that the position is just easily winning for white by any means. So I'm not looking at queen f1. So I'm ruling out some of the lines that I had in my head beforehand. I was like, queen f1. He can go like queen b8 or something. He doesn't have to mess around with you. Actually, after queen f1, probably queen e5. And then you got to make a move like queen d3, and there's already, you're defending, and it feels icky. We do not like this. So we can rule out queen f1. And slow moves like h4, I think it just gives black time to do what he wants to do in the position. Like h4, say he plays queen e2. That's kind of annoying. So queen d1 prevents queen e2 and makes that threat on d6. I'm going with it. All right, that's what Ivanchuk played in the game. Okay. Slow improvement of the position. You don't have the potential to check on the back rank, and the rook's kind of loose on c7. So my immediate reaction is rook a7, just so it's covered by the bishop and you have some flexibility. Rook a7, queen e5. Queen d3. I don't think he wants to trade knight for bishop there. I think that's an easy ending for us. I like rook a7, I'm just not seeing the follow-up. Maybe on the subsequent move it's like, okay, rook a7, queen e5, queen c2, with the idea to go to c7. All right, I do like rook a7. That was not it. h4, another move that makes a lot of sense in the position. That's the stuff we're trying to avoid. Queen c1 or queen c2 seems a bit passive. If I had to choose between queen c1 and queen c2 I believe is more accurate because it defends the e-pawn. Queen a1 is also a possibility. Queen a1 prevents knight c6 because of queen a8 check. So there's my 3 candidate moves, and if I've got to choose between those 3, queen a1 is an easy choice. because black's plan is clearly to try to get that knight to that really strong square. But say after queen a1, king d8, rook a7, knight c6, rook a8, king d7, queen a4, queen b1, king g2. I don't know what's going on there. The longer you go in calculation, the more chance that you're missing things. So that makes me nervous. Just personally, some people may be able to look at the position with extreme clarity when it's this simple, but I try not to go more than 3 moves. 3 moves, I'm pretty confident I can see the position very clearly, but once you start getting 5 and 7 moves, you've got to be missing something. But the immediate idea of stopping knight c6 seems essential. Queen a1, if king d8, rook a7, knight c6, rook a8, king d7. Queen a6. A queen move there looks pretty good. But okay, queen a1 is definitely where I want to start. Rook a7. Rook a8. Okay. Queen a6 was my first reaction. Well, no, it wasn't. Queen a4 was my first reaction, but queen a6 looks pretty good. But we're back to that concept of, did I want to trade queens here? And I did not, because I felt that it would be difficult to win. So going back to my previous assessment, I'm sticking to it. It's queen a6, queen takes a6, rook takes a6, and then knight e5. But after knight e5, I've got rook h8, h5, f4, knight g4, I move the bishop. I can't even go rook g8 though to hit the weak g-pawn. Rook h6, he goes bishop f7, and then rook h7, bishop e8. The pieces can hold everything together there. Yeah, queen trade looks like that will hold for black. I am curious though. I'll have to look at that. Let me mark that. Well, I need to decide on a move first, and then I'll put in queen a6 and analyze it after the fact with the engine. See if I'm evaluating it properly. h5 doesn't make any sense because of queen takes h5. Pawn moves don't really make sense here, and I don't see a way to improve the bishop. So it's a queen move or a rook move. Thinking process, 3 candidate moves. Queen a6 was one, but I evaluated it as wrong. The only other threat that I see is moving the rook, say to attack the h-pawn. But after rook h8, h5. Back to the idea earlier from queen d1, rook h8, h5, rook h7. So we're threatening queen takes f6. Soon as I see a nice attacking idea, it's hard for me to get away from it. Rook h8, h5, rook h7, knight e5. Queen a7. That looks pretty good. Rook h8. Rook h8. Rook h8. Okay, and he goes bishop h3. Immediate reaction, king h2. Get away from me. Go away now. King h2, bishop f1. That doesn't do anything. Queen a7. Yeah, queen a7. That's a great one. What's his plan if I go king h2? Bishop G4. I just take on H7. King H2. Queen F1. Queen takes, bishop takes, rook takes H7. And that's got to be enough there. King H2, Queen F1, Queen takes, bishop takes, rook takes H7, because in the long term I can go G4, H5 and create a outside pass pawn. I feel like that wins the game. I'm going with King H2 here. No. Rook takes H7 immediately. Okay, we're threatening Queen takes F6. That makes sense. Queen D3. Okay, so Queen takes E4 with the threat of Queen G2 mate. So I'm back to my King H2 idea. And if Queen F1, yeah, it just transposes. Okay, that was played. Okay. This looks kind of scary. King G1 doesn't make sense because black's happy to repeat. I have this impulse to try to hold the E-pawn, but there's no way that Queen takes F6 is right. It feels bad. Queen F6, Queen E4. And how do you even, yeah, how do you even? That's a great question after Queen takes F6, Queen E4. Queen A4 seems logical to prevent knight E5, but I don't have any substance there. Queen A4, Queen E2 with the follow-up of Queen F3. Queen A4, Queen E2, King G1, Queen D1. No, Queen E1. It's Queen D1 hangs the Queen. Queen A4, Queen E2, King G1, Queen E1, King H2, Queen E2. I don't see a good follow-up. Okay, King G1 we ruled out. Queen A4 we ruled out. No checks. No big threats after Queen A8. Sometimes the thinking process is just trying to find a decent move. Okay, that's where I was having a brain fart here. Black can't play Queen takes E4 because the white queen is still attacking the bishop on F1. I'm so scared of the threats that I'm not seeing that the queen is actually tied to the bishop on F1, so they can't coordinate still. So you have time. You let the queen sit because she's doing work on A1. I don't feel comfortable with playing G4 yet to try to create a passer, so we're going to try to create a passer a different way. I'm going to move my rook to G7 to try to grab the G-pawn, so that way the H-pawn can run. Rook G7, let's say pass, rook takes, queen takes. We're hitting the rook and threatening mate there. Rook takes, queen takes F1, queen takes G6, queen H3. I don't know, that looks like a draw, even though we've got a passer. Maybe it's one of those threat execution deals. I still like rook G7 though, because we need a move, And I think like any queen move weakens our position. Any pawn move weakens our position. Moving the bishop doesn't make any sense because there's no targets. The rook seems to be the only thing that you can move. King g1, just bishop h3, and we repeat. Process of elimination. Got it. Now the queen can move. Rook takes g6 still is on the radar. But after queen takes e4, makes me uncomfortable. Queen takes f6 can be played. And after queen takes queen f6, queen e4, queen g6, we get everything in the world that we want. Yeah. Yep. Straight queens and get another pawn and get a passer and get everything we want. Yep. Okay. How do we add pressure here? Gotta watch out for bishop f1. Pushing the h-pawn doesn't work yet because the bishop takes. No queen g4, no queen. Queen g5. Queen g5. Offering to trade queens. Queen g5, knight e5. That looks dangerous. Not good. No good. Queen f7, on the other hand, threatens to trade in a way where there is no knight e5. So, okay, queen f5. Or, queen f5. Queen f7, queen f7, queen d1. Queen f5 check. And we can always bring the queen back to h3 and even fianchetto the queen with g2. I'm more worried about black's potential counterplay than I am anything else. So that's queen f7 looks like a good move. Okay, queen e4. Hard to say. Okay, the benefit here is there's no knight e5 because we've got queen e7. Can I get away with h5 here? h5, knight d4? No, that doesn't work. Bishop d4, queen e7. h5, bishop c4, queen f4, h5, bishop f1. Okay. I like rook g5. Rook g5, if knight e5, queen f5 check, forcing the trade of queens. and GG. Rook G5, Queen B1. Queen F5 again. Rook G5. Rook G5. Nope. Threaten to trade. Well. King could start running up the board here if we play this right. And I don't see... God, moves like 95 make me nervous. Dangerous. Can't play H5 because it hangs a pawn. We're relatively covered. No checks. G4. G4 seems very playable. And then the king, after H5, has a path to run if need be. I played G4 because I wanted to play H5. He does that. Looks easy enough, H5. King G3, Queen H1, F3, Queen G1, King H4, Queen H1, King G5, Bishop takes F3, Queen F5. Looking dangerous. And I wanted to be noted too, like throughout the game, it's like I'm staying relaxed. I'm taking a couple minutes a move. I'm asking questions every move. This is my natural thinking process. Hopefully you're getting something out of watching me kind of go through the games with Solitaire Chess and how I process. I think in a future game I'm going to pick something that's far outside of my style and see how I do. It's good to practice different things, but this is definitely an old school strategy of training. And I don't see the danger in playing... Okay, F3 immediately is a big no-no because F3, Queen B2 check, and you lose the rook on G7. King G3 immediately. Say Queen G1 check, King H4, Queen H1 check, King G5. And I feel like we're completely safe. King G3, Queen H1. F3, Queen G1, King H4, Queen H1, King G5, Bishop takes F3, H6. Or Queen F5 check first. Queen F5 check, King C7, H6. That looks really sketchy. Is there a way that I can not lose the F pawn? King g3, queen h1. h6 immediately. Knight e5 seems to be very, very scary. Bishop c1. There's probably some knight d4 or something. Nah. We like our bishop. I don't know, I'm drawing a blank on this one. King g3 is my first reaction. I'm like, okay, everything goes with pushing the pawns here. King g3. Nope. Queen f6. That makes a lot of sense. Protects the rook from any discoveries. Gives king more options with f4 and h4. Prevents the knight from moving on c6. Excellent move. Does everything you want in the position. That's why these guys are great. Check. King g3. King h4 looks a lot better here. So I don't want to allow queen f3. Okay. Bishop e2 is the threat. So if the king ever goes to g5, the g-pawn's a problem. f3 seems to hold everything nicely. f3 supports the g-pawn, and it's a lot safer. So if, say, f3, bishop e2, we have queen f5 check. We get off that potential attack and discovery stuff, and then the king has a clean path. f3. King g5. First reaction is queen f7. And then he's got queen d5. Queen f7. Queen d5. Queen f7. Where's black 2? Queen f7, queen a5. King h6. Queen f7. Queen a5, king h6. Queen e1. Bishop g5. Looks completely safe. I'm going with queen f7 here. Nope. He went back to h4. Okay, this must have been... I'm picking up some time. I'm going with queen f7 again. Nope. f4. That makes sense. Hitting the bishop. Best square to move the bishop. c1 or b6? b6 looks better because it cuts squares away from the king, and there's no like queen b2 to continue to harass the bishop because of our queen. Uh-huh. I don't see any checks. That are useful. Okay, so the point here is for queen b5 to be useful. But does queen b5 even do anything? Okay, h6, queen b5 check, f5, blocks the bishop on e4. Yeah, h6, queen b5, f5, queen takes b6, h7. Nothing doing. Queen b8, queen e6 check, followed by rook g8, wins. Yeah. And that's the last move of the game. Okay. So, the line that I was calculating was here. And if takes here, because of here, check, followed by this and the pawn queens. All right. So let's go back and check and see some of my incorrect responses, because I like to understand what I did wrong. In this position, I said b4, which is terrible after knight e5, queen d4, and f6. Something we were looking to avoid the entire game. Makes sense. So rook c1, b4. I said bishop d2 here, which after knight e5, black has equality. And rook a4 seems very awkward, but yeah, interesting stuff. h3, knight c4. And rook b1 is dead equal, or bishop e1, queen a7 is equal. Bishop pair is not enough there. Too many awkward pawns. b5, f6 was played. Got a lot of these. That's probably one of the more difficult moves. I was very proud that I found that one. King e8, and I said rook a7. That doesn't lose any advantage. It's recommending h5 and then queen f1. So apparently the queen trade was actually good. Or not. Same kind of ideas. Computer doesn't know what to do. It's shuffling. Okay, so it wasn't that great then. h4. Bishop f4, number one move. That's interesting. Another way to stop knight e5. Because if knight c6, bishop takes d6 wins. Engine play, man. It's ridiculous. Because on pawn takes, it just wins on the spot. +8. Beautiful move by the engine. Not on my radar at all. Queen a1. Check. And king g2 was first choice, and queen a4 was second choice. Apparently the engine has faith in this position. I personally do not. Okay, at depth 30, it's saying white has 2/10 of a pawn advantage, so I think its eyes were getting big at a quick analysis. Okay, it's getting maybe a little bit more than that. 4/10 of a pawn tops at depth 33. So, I don't know. Somebody's got some sort of table base or something like that, they could let me know, but I don't have a lot of faith in white's winning chances there. Rook h8 was played. And I said king h2. That's second choice and doesn't spoil any advantage. Because after bishop g4, queen a8, not rook takes h7. It's supposed to be strong. Okay, so one of my moves wasn't terrible. g4 immediately here is supposed to be completely winning. Wow. Also not on my radar. But again, it's the same principle. He can't take the e-pawn. So what do you do? And if something like knight e5, you're losing mate in 4, queen a7. So you need the knight there. And if f5, blowing it up. Yeah, very engine-like play from the engine. It's like, no, king safety, not a big issue to me. Because a move like f4, which looks pretty good, engine's like, take the bishop, sure, and get mated. Humans don't think this way. That's one of those indicators when you're playing like an engine cheater online, when you start seeing these types of variations. You have a player a human player is very controlled when they have an advantage and they're trying to prevent counterplay. Engine just goes headfirst into it and it's like, no, I knock you out harder. Interesting stuff. Should be 2. Queen takes. Queen g6. Queen f7. And I said rook g5 here. What was wrong with rook g5? Nothing. Engine wants knight e5, and I was going to trade queens, and I felt that this was much easier to win than what happened in the game. Yeah, +6. Okay, so I was not wrong with rook g5. Queen f4 keeps tension, which is definitely Ivanchuk style. But there was definitely room to go wrong here. I said king g3, and after king g1, king h4, queen h1, king g5, knight d8. That looks stupid. The engine gives rook g6 here. Because here, which looks good at first sight, king h6, and this is +7. So there's no way to stop the pawn, and there's really no checks. Interesting. Did not see deep enough of that line. But my rook g5 would have ended things. So I feel like all this was overly complicated. I said queen f7 here, which queen e2 is recommended, and then queen f4, and then knight e5, then king h6, and it's still a complicated battle. But engine says, no, don't worry about it. White's +7. All this is just ridiculous. King h4, queen check, queen a2. f4 was played. h6, f5, and I calculated this properly. Queen e6 check immediately is stronger according to the engine. It's after king c7, rook e7. And say king b8. This is engine's first choice, but I went h7, it's still +10, check, and there is +12. It's +25 if rook takes e7 here, with the idea of king b6 followed by queen takes e4 again, where there's no real hope in the position. Okay, so hopefully you found our July 4th edition of Solitaire Chess to be something instructive for you. Hopefully you enjoyed it in this symmetrical English position. And if you made it this far in the video, July 4th is not only a national holiday that we know, but it is also my mother's birthday. So if you would, just put happy birthday, Mom, or happy birthday, Mrs. Tillis, or something to that effect in the comments, because I'd like to be able to send the video to her, show her the last few seconds, and she gets a shout out, because she supported me for so many years, and I would not be where I'm at today without her taking me to tournaments. So happy birthday, Mom, and it'd be nice of you guys to show the support in the comments. Appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. See you next time.